Some are looking at Greece as a preview of what could happen here in the U.S. So former Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill spoke exclusively with Bloomberg. John Erlichman joins us now with a little bit more on what he had to say. John.
Deirdre, Paul O'Neill was already worried about deficits when he was at the Treasury almost 10 years ago. And if the U.S. fiscal picture does not improve, O'Neill told us what is happening in Greece could be a sign of things to come.
We now have, not many people know, $63 trillion worth of unfunded liabilities in the U.S. And, you know, by best estimates, we're going to continue growing the unfunded liabilities and the more transparent, accounted for U.S. debt. And, you know, I hope this doesn't happen, but it is not out of the question that we could follow in the path of Greece and other places that have not followed a prudent fiscal policy. And eventually, if we don't change course, we could be a basket case ourselves.
You could see the same kind of economic woes in the U.S. as we're seeing in Greece.
If we don't do anything, let's say, if we just leave things the way they are for 20 years, I think we're on a really bad course, John.
A decade ago, when you were Treasury Secretary, you were very concerned about deficits. We know the Bush administration's perspective on that. Looking back, do you think if they had had a different view on deficits, we'd be having a different conversation today?
I do. You know, when I went into office in January of 2001, we had a fiscal surplus that we'd inherited from the Clinton administration. And I was okay at the time with the early tax cuts, but I argued strenuously against the third tax cut because I thought there were four contending things that we needed to pay attention to. One was, this conversation took place in early and mid-2002. I was worried about another 9/11. I was worried then about the prospects of having to go to Iraq and the fiscal consequences of that. I strongly believe we need a fundamental reform of our tax system, and we needed some bridge financing, if you will, to accommodate that. And we needed to reform our entitlement programs, and we needed some bridge financing for that. And so at the time, the best econometric models said if we did the third Bush tax cut, it would increase the potential GDP in the fourth quarter of 2004 by 0.5 percentage point from, you know, 3.3 to 3.8. And I said, we don't need it for economic reasons, and there's a pile of four other reasons we shouldn't be doing this. You know, I think if we'd taken my course, we'd be in a very different place.
And next hour, we'll tell you what O'Neill had to say on the topic of financial reform, including some fresh details, Deirdre, on how he feels about the Volcker rule.